Of all the stories I haven't yet reported, the assassination of Barack Obama will no doubt be a devastating blow. Whether it happens during the Democratic convention, an early motorcade, or maybe even as late as the end of his first year in office, certainly not longer than that, Obama's shooting will be a shock to America's wealthy, well-educated urbanites, and maybe some African Americans.
I think we all have to take responsibility for our actions and our words. We are a free country, and this balance between freedom and safety is one that we have to carefully balance.
Well, sure, when you call people Nazis and fascists and such, that's kind of inciting, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you say that's inciting anger in people, Ms. Pelosi?
I have concerns about some of the language that is being used, because I saw this myself in the late 70s in San Francisco. This kind of rhetoric was very frightening, and it created a climate in which violence took place. And
well, what I'd like to know is this. Why is she referring to violence when nobody has suggested violence? Why is she talking about violence when the people have said no to health insurance reform? No, I don't see any violence in that.
I wish that we would all, again, curb our enthusiasm in some of the statements that are made, so understanding that some of the people, the ears that it is falling on, are not as balanced as the person making the statement might assume. But again, our country is great because people can say what they think and they believe.
But if she really means people should be held responsible for any incitement they may cause, she really ought to call Jimmy Carter up on the dock, don't you think?
She's trying to...
Jimmy Carter just tried to create a race war yesterday by saying that anyone who opposes Obama is doing so because he's a black man.
During the interview, we talked about what some see as a heightened climate of racial and other hate speech since the election of President Obama. A certain number of signs and images at last weekend's big Tea Party march on Washington and at other recent events have featured racial and other violent themes, and President Carter today said he is extremely worried by it.
I think an overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man, that he's African American. I live in the South, and I've seen the South come a long way, and I've seen the rest of the country that shared this South's attitude toward minority groups at that time, particularly African Americans. That racism inclination still exists. And I think it's bubbled up to the surface because of a belief among many white people, not just in the South but around the country, that African Americans are not qualified to lead this great country. It's an abominable circumstance and grieves me and concerns me very deeply.
Many people right now are afraid that she and her group are going to plan a fake right-wing attack. They're planning it right now. And they think that she is prepping the nation for this fake right-wing attack right now. In other words, study your history, schmuck.
But I also think that they have to take responsibility for any incitement that they may cause.
Where will I be when Obama is shot? I can never forget how I imagine that day will be. I'll be working a normal lunch shift, and all of a sudden somebody will come running in yelling, "Obama's been shot! Obama's been shot!" And whether the killer is a lone gunman or some bitter ex-Marine or a puppet set up by the Republican Party or even the Clintons, who knows?
About the Reichstag fire in Germany that led to the rise of Hitler. And when I hear Nancy Pelosi saying things like this, I wonder if she's seeding us for that type of environment where that could happen.
Well, it's just what I just said, and perhaps they'll leave a few tea bags around the scene.
Exactly. It's
or birther literature. They could leave tea bags and birther literature. and say that they did it. No, I understand, Max. We're dealing with very dangerous people whose backs are against the wall right now because they're about to have this great prize snatched away from them by the will of the people, and they hate the people. They despise the people. They spit on the people. They think the people are garbage.
And that's what we're getting. That's what we know what they think of us. And they got another thing coming.
Well, I don't know. She says there will be blood. She speaks of political violence. What does she mean? What does she know that we don't know? What does Madam Pelosi know that we don't know?
Put all these 100 people in a room, strap them into gurneys, inject them with sodium pentothal. How many of them would say, I don't like the idea of having a black president? What percentage?
I work in, MSNBC comes to you from NBC and GER headquartered at a communist, fascist, progressive building. An evil, mind-controlling, symbol-ridden, living, breathing, evil building. I know this is true because Glenn Beck has told me so.
But who's in the back here? Let's show you his hand. This man's strong hand is holding on to the reins tightly here, holding back the engines of industry, being led into the bright future of tomorrow by a young boy. Who is this? Who is this?
And just say, yes,
okay, now everybody, let's sing it together on the count of 3.
All right.
I like that.
2, 3.
This is the strong leader taking that, using that industry and those machines to lead us into the bright future, led by our children. Gee, who's having indoctrination next week? Oh, yeah, that's right, the president. Completely unrelated.
Mr. Obama has been compared to Hitler at town hall meetings where some people showed up with loaded guns. Conservative radio and TV hosts have called him a racist with, quote, a deep-seated hatred for white people.
Basketball coach, a young, wiry man from New York with a nice jumper, who after a pickup game with some talkative black men had muttered within earshot of me and 3 of my teammates that we shouldn't have lost to a bunch of and who, when I told him to shut up, had calmly explained the apparently obvious fact that there are black people and there are these guys were n***s. That's just how white folks will do you.
The president has had his birth in Hawaii and his nationality questioned, and he's been called everything from a socialist to a fascist who wants to empower the government to kill senior citizens. This week, Mr. Obama was criticized for a speech to school kids about staying in school and working hard.
To avoid being mistaken for such a sellout, I chose my friends carefully. The more politically active black students, the foreign students, the Chicanos, the Marxist professors and structural feminists and punk rock performance poets. We smoked cigarettes and wore leather jackets. When we ground out our cigarettes in the hallway carpet, or set our stereos so loud that the walls began to shake, we were resisting bourgeois society's stifling constraints.
Every president faces scathing criticism from the fanatical fringe, but this at least feels different. And even officials in the Secret Service acknowledge that threats to President Obama's life have been coming in 4 times as often as they were for President George W. Bush.
I spent the last 2 years of high school in a daze, locking away the questions that life seemed insistent on posing. I kept playing basketball, attended classes sparingly, drank beer heavily, and tried drugs enthusiastically. I discovered that it didn't make any difference whether you smoked reefer in the white classmate's sparkling new van, or in the dorm room with some brother you'd met down at the gym, or on the beach with a couple of Hawaiian kids who had dropped out of school and now spent most of their time looking for an excuse to brawl.
You know, Chairman, I think the evidence is so overwhelming that there is an effort out there to demonize the first African-American president. I think that the question is there sort of an institutional bigotry in certain quarters of this country, or are these isolated instances? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's frightening either way.
What's the difference? This got a picture on it.
What does it mean?
That don't have a picture on it.
It doesn't have anybody. So what? It doesn't have that.
Sir, leave the picture down. If you put the picture back up, you will be charged with trespassing, and you will have to go. Okay?
Well, wait a second. I'm charged with trespassing?
I said you will be.
But that's not trespassing.
If I told you once to take it down and you put it back up, then I can charge you whatever I want to charge you with. Okay? So I'm telling you.
So you make the law too?
Put the picture down, sir. Thank you.
This is America. This used to be America.
It ain't no more, okay?
I know it ain't. That's the point of the picture.